Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Paranormal Karen, funny too. Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Oh, and did I mention she's funny too? Yeah, cha-cha-cha.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the podcast today. Let me get my housework out of the way fast. We are in June. July, I will see you all in Reno, Nevada at the Laugh Factory on the 16th. Also, August, I will see you in Portland, Maine for the Portland, Maine Comedy Festival. There'll be lobster, and I will be keep my vegan mouth shut, and I won't say a word. And then October, Michigan, Ann Arbor, Michigan, and more to come. But right now, and leave me 5 stars or whatever the heck you can do there. Facebook card of the day, follow me, everything. Jokes on Twitter. Today, back to see us again is our friend, Jim Perry from the podcast that I love called Euphomet. And I'm going to spell that EUPHOMET. And Jim, I know that's probably a word that a lot of people know that I don't have to explain, but since I don't read, I had to spell it out so they would know what it meant. How are you?
I'm so good. Thank you so much for having me back on. The first time I was on, I had such a good time. I was exhausted. I was road weary. I was a little delirious. And so I appreciate being back while fully rested.
Well, none of that showed last time, but it was so glad to have now so much going on. And the first thing I want to talk to, because we're going to talk, because I believe we're dropping this on the 14th or the 21st, and season 2 is coming out on June 11th. We're going to talk about that. We're going to, I want to see about Hellier, and it's interesting. You and I keep crossing paths now all the time. It's kind of cool on business we can't talk about. How about that, folks? And I'm reading your website today. I always listen to the podcast, but I noticed that you use the word a culture, like a cult culture. Did you make that up?
I did not. No, interestingly enough, I thought I had made it up. And then upon further investigation, I am, just a litany of folks that have used that in other subcultures and weird Reddit forums. And so, yeah, I did not, but it's a word I really like. I really enjoy the use of that word. And although it doesn't have a much meaning to the general populace at this point, I think I want to do all I can to expose that terminology to just the general public.
Yes, and it's to me it kind of says it all, and so maybe you did think of it. It was just already in the ethers or the universe. And what does the word Euphomet actually mean?
Great question. So I appreciate you spelling it out because it has been a bane of existence for me. Essentially, that is a word I created. I tried to find a word that fit the dynamics of a humanistic, a cultured project. And I just couldn't find anything. And also thinking in terms of brand, I wanted something really ownable. I wanted something that was definable and just mine, right? So Euphomet is a little bit of a euphemism, a playful notion of a euphemistic Baphomet. So playful devil, if you will. And I think that points towards this sort of contrast between our regular walking state of consciousness, right? And then whatever all this stuff is. And in the middle somewhere, I think is where I like to be and where I think I like the show to be.
I love that thing. And for people that don't know, you have to listen to this podcast. It's sort of like you take a topic and you kind of go out and you meet and you do certain interviews, and it's edited so, the editing makes it so pleasing to listen to. And that's a weird word. I don't know if I've ever used it before like that, but it is very pleasing to listen to, Jim.
Thank you. I mean, I that's a huge compliment. I appreciate it very much. And a lot of my work is focused towards doing a project that is something folks won't typically hear within the paranormal, and treating this material that we all love and this I don't know, this mystery, this enchantment, this wonderment that we all feel with some of this material and presenting it in a way that might not have been done before. And that really is taking cues from things like public radio and falling in love with things like This American Life and Snap Judgment. And, oh, well, how can I do that? And how can I integrate the paranormal into a storyscape that's like that? And essentially, it created this whole other avenue and skill set that I had to develop in terms of, well, how do you even make a radio documentary? Like, how does this work? And so bit by bit, I think we've gotten a little bit better, and I've gotten a little bit better, and Euphomet is the end result of that.
And I think last time we talked, because you go right on location or you have people go right on location. Last time, I believe you were in New Orleans getting ready to talk to a guy about voodoo, and that was fascinating.
Thank you so much. I actually, the other day, I listened back to our conversation to see where I was. And I was in New Orleans. I was about to meet with, and/or had just met with, a vampire. And this vampire and I were exploring his life, being a voodoo priest, and integrating this physiological identity of being a vampire. And so it's me. I go to every single one of these locations. I use it as an excuse to go and travel around and get into some very weird and sticky situations on occasion.
And it's all a tax write-off.
That absolutely 100%. That always helps. Yeah.
Taxes are the scariest thing of all.
Yeah. People have asked me, like, what are you scared of? Are you scared of like ghosts? Are you scared of like, I'm scared of taxes. That's what
the IRS. That's who I'm afraid of. We need Euphomet. You can do that program. And I apologize about the motorcycles. People that listen to my podcast know I have some sort of a drag race that's going on outside my house all the time. If people heard that. Speaking of that, this must be a question that a lot of people ask you. What perhaps is one of the places, has there ever been a place that you've gotten to where you were really like, I'm in a little bit deeper, I'm in a little bit over my head, or scary, you know what I mean?
I have to say that there was an episode that I recorded for this upcoming season 2 that shook me to my core, that legitimately made me afraid in a way that I never have been on any of the other tapings. And harmless enough, I was out in the wilderness with a lifelong alien abductee. And if you know anything about the abductee experience, these are really harrowing events that tend to stick with people and are frequent and repeating, and sometimes a little bit random in terms of when these interactions happen. So this individual who has actually studied and become really good at this consciousness experiment, this form of communication with extraterrestrials called CE5. It was developed by Stephen Greer and others, and it's basically using things like mass consciousness or individual meditation to call in and communicate with extraterrestrials. So this is an individual who had developed this skill set, who feels like they can communicate readily with extraterrestrial beings, and that, did this in some way to find some sense of control of her situation, which was frequent, repeated abductions and visitations. So,
wow. Yeah, I
that's
know
setting the stage.
That one freaks me out a little bit too, because that's really you're going to be so out of control, out of your element.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, it was really great to spend time with her and learn about the ways that she's trying to control her situation and her reaction to these sort of experiences, whether they're, to me, like, whether that is actually happening or not, it doesn't matter. It's an experience that they're afflicted by. So it's trying to manifest, trying to navigate your life in a constructive way while this is going on. And so she agreed to take us out into the wilderness of Maine and potentially connect with extraterrestrials. So, I find myself out in the woods with a flashlight, and this individual, performing CE5 and essentially trying to make contact and pull these extraterrestrials down that she's had such a intense relationship with. And
which, by the way, is how I intend to fill the Portland, Maine Comedy Festival with my CE5 communication. It'll be filled with aliens. Sorry, I just had to throw that in there because Maine came up twice. I was like, wait a minute. Okay. So
yeah. No, I was gonna ask you about Portland later, but
so she was attempting to communicate with them.
She was attempting to communicate, and those are one of those moments when you look around, it's pitch dark in a strange wilderness you've never been, and you're looking up at this open sky, and you're thinking to yourself, what have I gotten into here?
Mm-hmm. Was this worth a podcast? Yes.
Was this worth the podcast? Absolutely. And it's interesting because it was a different kind of fear than I've ever experienced. And it was a fear of not being able to control what happens next. It was a fear of no matter what your intent, which I think is really important in this work, is managing what your intent is, managing your feelings and your thought patterns in terms of what you're trying to accomplish with this work, right? I think that's very important. I think that protects a lot of people in a lot of situations, even if we're talking about biologically, whatever your mental construct is, right? Your mental health biologically in this 3D reality, right? Like wow. We need to be sort of mentally healthy and protect ourselves in those ways so you don't spin out. So this felt like I had a lack of control in regards to that. It felt like, well, maybe the outcome of this is not dependent on what my consciousness thinks, but an outside force, an outside consciousness. And that as like a kind of confirmed control freak in some regards, and a man who lives by a certain code that's kind of regimented, that freaked me out so bad, Karen.
Wow. It is interesting what you could have been standing. It is interesting what kind of sets off our fear factor. Like, and sometimes it's not what you think, but also in that moment, like I was brought up with a big backyard that was the woods, and I'm not afraid of the woods. But the more I get into the paranormal, the more I'm like, I think I'm good in a building. I think I'm good here with no. But also with someone like this who is either has a skill that we are not familiar with, your brain might start to go crazy places, like what if she disappears, or what if she starts channeling something I don't understand. And I know it might sound crazy now, but in the moment you're like, wait, what if this could go terribly wrong? So wow, that's pretty. Can we ask, did you see anything, or do we need to wait for the episode? We'll wait.
No, it's okay. I'll be honest. Like, we didn't see anything that night, but I think in terms of the story and in terms of what she has seen
to offer,
what she has experienced,
yeah,
is really where I think people will. I don't. It's to me personally, it's the scariest thing I've ever worked on in my life.
Wow. So the story 100%. Is enough. We will enjoy the story whether they show up or not. In fact, yes. I bet it's a better story without them showing up.
Yeah,
because that would be the story. Yep. Someone had a friend that she was in Fresno, and she would play her singing bowl. They had a lot of alien spaceship sightings, her and her husband, which I think once you have one, you're kind of in the club, and it keeps happening. And she would play her singing bowl, the ones that go woo, and say she wanted to see one. And in 2 days, she saw the spaceship. So there must be a way to communicate with them. Well, that's pretty spooky right off the bat.
Yeah, and the season really was filled with experiences and meeting individuals that, again, defied any expectations I had and challenged me to think in different ways and really self-analyze what my position in all of this work really is.
Yeah. And you know what else? I'm going to make a weird leap here before we get back to this. I was watching Hellier, which, by the way, if people hadn't, Carl was on my podcast earlier, and I was in touch with them for a little bit, and I couldn't we didn't make the next connection to get some of the cast on the show. But you tell everybody, Hellier, first of all, is I think it's on Netflix now, right?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, check out Hellier. It's like a 4 or 6 episode. It's a documentary type where they're looking for something in Kentucky, which we all know there's trouble to find in Kentucky. But I hear Jim Perry's name pop up. So how did you get involved, or are these your buddies, or what happened there?
These are indeed my buddies. I am only related to the project by way of synchronicity, I suppose, and by way of mutual support. And I do a lot of work with Planet Weird. And in fact, the second season of Euphomet, which is accompanied by a short film series, will be exclusively available on Planet Weird's YouTube channel. So you can go there right now, actually, and watch the first episode as well as the teaser episode at the time of this posting. And so you'll see my relationship develop with those folks. And they're actually all directed by Carl Pfeiffer, the director and creator of the Hellier series.
Who did a great job.
Fantastic.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
Really.
I believe that Hellier really is very sort of a postmodern paranormal piece in the way that it does not confine itself to the restrictions or the expectations of a typical paranormal TV show. Mm-hmm. I think that's why it's opening the door to a lot of curious individuals who may not even watch paranormal TV, but perhaps watch paranormal movies or horror films or science fiction or read a lot of books. It is more contemplative. It is more complicated. Yeah. It is more it challenges you in a lot of different ways. And Hellier essentially, I don't really want to go into a synopsis of the piece because I don't think I'll do it justice. But essentially, it's about the pursuit of goblins in a rural town of Kentucky. Mm-hmm. So it's pretty strange stuff.
Yeah.
Yet it really introduces a litany of complex paranormal issues that any investigator starts to face once they start deeply immersing themselves in the field. And so in that way, you get to see a cast of characters who believe at some point they think they're onto something.
Yeah.
Whether that's in their career or in life or anything else, they have some semblance of a construct. And then they learn, they're like, oh no.
It's not what I thought.
Maybe we don't know as much as we thought we knew.
You know, that it is really, I think I remember when Carl was on the podcast, he wasn't talking about it yet because it kind of came out, it came out fast, and I think we were right before the trailer. And I had said to him, no one's really doing any shows on elementals or Mothman and he kept going, just wait. So I loved it when it came out. But, that is a thing that, and I think that's what podcasts like yours, Euphomet, and mine, where people don't understand the paranormal is not just ghosts, and people think all there is ghosts and demons. I remember the first time someone used the word fairy around me, and I was like, what? Are we at a Disney show? And now, it's like I see other people's faces when things come up, or like you said, goblins, or even leprechauns. These are all, sure, Disney made them look, like they're a cartoon, but these tales have all come from somewhere.
Truly the lexicon of the supernatural and the occult and the esoteric and the whatever other word that you want to phrase around this unknown phenomenon is breathtaking. And modern American paranormal, for sure, in terms of mainstream modern American paranormal, hasn't even scratch the surface on the strange that's out there. And some of it you have to look in, deeper into our lore, right? And let's not even forget there's a bigger world out there with all of their own stories and phenomena. And it's really startling, the amount of complex stories and experiences that are to be found and to be revealed and to be shared out there. And that's one of the reasons I really love working with Greg and Dana and Carl and Connor and everyone else with Hellier and Planet Weird, and the mystic friends that I have, non-dual shaman healer Tim Rothschild, right? There is there's a real merging happening right now of individuals and of thoughts and of techniques that I feel this generation of investigators are starting to really, as they come into their own with their own topics of interest, they are being forced and challenged to adapt and integrate other processes, other notions, other techniques. And in that way, you start looking at, some previous generations, you start looking at John Keel, you start looking at some of these guys who were much more inclusive in terms of the phenomenon. It's almost as if we've come out of some sort of regressive sleep, that there's so much of this phenomenon that we have forgotten that was not addressed. And I think we owe some of that to how media is now, how the internet has changed our way that we can research and process and read and learn. I think the internet has been the gateway now in its current state for folks to connect on much more esoteric things. It gets much stranger than ghosts.
It does. And you know what? That's a perfect place. Let me take a break, and I want to comment on that. We'll be right back, folks. I have a new favorite thing. It's my ring from Copper Case Jewelry. I did a show in Colorado, met a wonderful young man named Casey who told me he made crystal jewelry. So I'm in. That's all I had to hear. He makes raw crystal jewelry using copper electroformulist techniques. Do I know what that means? No. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing those words correctly. All I know is I love the final product. It has become my favorite ring. And I know you're thinking, crystal ring, that sounds kind of clunky and sharp. Is it going to be heavy, or is it going to get caught on my sleeve every time I put my coat on? Absolutely not. It is the most delicate, perfect size ring. I even wear it through yoga, and it's uncomfortable to wear jewelry in yoga. Not this. You got to check out Casey's pieces. Go to @29 Copper Case on Instagram, and you can see all his new work. You can also email him if you want something special at 29coppercase@gmail.com. Check it out. I know you're going to love it. Okay, we're back. It's funny that you were saying that about the internet, because I don't even know if having a network TV show now is the win, because what people are doing on the internet and what they have the freedom to do, that a network executive would say, no, we're not talking about goblins, or what are you doing there, is, it's really pretty amazing. And I do think that helps people to break out like this special. I don't know if there's a comic named Tom Kenny, and one of his funniest jokes is he always said, who had the guts to pitch Hogan's Heroes? Who went into the pitch meeting and goes, it's about American prisoners of war. No, wait, it's funny. It's going to be really funny. And it was like, exactly. And I think the way they did it on the internet, the way Hellier came out on the internet, was really what gave it the freedom to be what it is, and then go to Netflix. And it's funny because like you said, you have to have that freedom. One of my friends was on he did all kinds of investigations, and he ran into a house that really had, it wasn't leprechauns. I think it was elves. And how do you say that? And they literally had to go on the internet, go all the way back and find out the way to get rid of elves, which was they had to get a puffer. They had to get an old English puffer somewhere.
Wow.
And I know. But you're right about that. I think that in one way the internet has connected us all, but also I almost feel like it's made it a small world, but it's made it a big world. And this is way off topic, but I feel like the EMF that is being thrown off by Wi-Fi, which is everywhere, is also sort of messing with between the worlds, and it's getting a little more clearer. You know what I mean?
Interesting. Wow, that is fantastic. I've never thought about it in that way. I've heard the conspiracy, a lot of conspiracy angle towards Wi-Fi signals, and let alone like 5G, right? But I've never thought about it in terms of a way of like sort of essentially breaking down the veil. Right? Is it that's sort of what you're referring to?
That's what I think. I listened to Joshua P. Warren was actually the first one with this. He was saying how we're kind of making the whole world a different kind of magnet. And I was like, I think he's right, because a lot of times too, in cases now, we end up telling people, turn off your Wi-Fi at night. If you're having activity at night, turn off your Wi-Fi, because it's a constant, kind of buzz there. I just think I think we're evolving. I think even the 5G or whatever, we have to be changing our energy field somehow, which also may be changing like this communication with that you were talking about with the lady and the UFOs and stuff. I just think it may be subtle, but it is that switch that needs to be flipped.
Yeah, I agree. And it's interesting. We're at a place where some people are becoming more conscious of this idea that changes can be occurring, and that physiologically our bodies can be reacting to certain changes, right? I think for a long time we were taught that we possess these like sort of sovereign meat bodies, and that they are, sort of immune to not just frequencies, but spiritual implications as well, right? Influence in those regards, even culturalized influence, right? Like influence from the media. There are things that 10 to 15 years ago, maybe even not even that long, would have been thought conspiracy theory, but now are becoming accepted. And I think there's probably a litany of things that could be looked at that way. I think it's important for us to realize as a culture, perhaps, that, we tend to change our minds a lot.
Yes.
that with the passage of time, context is constantly changing. Look at rediscovered musicians or bands or things of that nature that at the time perhaps completely slept on, right? Mm-hmm. Just didn't even consider. And at this point in time, perhaps it's like, oh no, they were like very important in that scene. Like they are actually lauded as something else. And history is lousy with incidents like that. And then when you start broaching spirituality or science, then it becomes even greater amount.
Yeah. I'm taking a class at the Rhine Education Institute on parapsychology, and yeah, it's fascinating. But it's right now I'm in the intro to parapsychology, and it's very intense. It really is like school, like learning who were the first to do this and the Society of Parapsychological Research, and it's very, very, because they're very adamant about that things are done in a lab or how they get. It's like scientists doing this, which is really great. But I always think I'm mixing two sentences at once here, but don't worry, my listeners are used to it. I think when you said we tend to change our mind, I think we change our mind so fast that it's like, I feel like we were like, yeah, everyone, healthcare for all, vote that guy in. And then Obama got in and they were like, yeah, not really. We were behind the idea then. Now we don't really want it. Take it away. And it goes, what I mean? And now everybody's like, no, wait, we should have got it. It goes back and forth, but it really is. We can't agree on much. So, yeah. So now your second season, you had a film crew with you?
I had a one-man film crew, and it was Carl Pfeiffer from Hellier.
Well, that's all you need.
Yeah, so Carl came with me. We produced and directed the thing together. Carl shot and is editing, and we're working on an entire series that will drop same day as every single Euphomet episode on podcast. And we'll have a nice little back and forth with a video version, a short video vignette is what we're calling them, and the longer full length audio podcast version. And so I've always wanted, like Carl and I have talked about working together for a long time. He had a hole in his schedule between Hellier 1 and Hellier 2. And it just was the right time. It was the right time to take Euphomet listeners deeper into the experiences that I have with these folks, and to really put a face, to really show the eyes of these human beings that are experiencing these things. It's so important. And I heard from so many Euphomet listeners that the first thing they do after listening to the podcast or after they start an episode is they look up the person. They want to look up, they want to see what they look like. They want to see these words, these experiences that are being presented. Who is saying this?
Mm-hmm.
Who does this person look like? So I felt that naturally this could be a really great way to get across not only the tone and tenor of these stories that we want to introduce, but really introduce the people as people outside the context of any spooky music or any theatrics. Like, these are the folks. That being said, Carl is a master of really creating a cinematic experience, and that was very important too. I think the production value that we can place into this project, I think, is a paramount consideration with whatever I do, and Carl can do it. So he was great. It was great to have him with me for essentially 2.5 weeks straight, traveling up the Eastern Seaboard. And he's a good road companion. He's good people.
Did he go with you to Maine?
He did. Yep.
Oh, good. Well, that, of course, could just be black on the screen, right? Just it's darkness. And that would be
It was just all a slight haze, It was interesting. During the production process of it, there were times where we had seen the weather in New York City or in New Hampshire, these places that we went, we were in upstate New Jersey. These places that we went had 70-degree weather or something, and then by the time we got there, it was rainy, it was dark. I think we had 1 or 2 days of any sort of sunlight the entire trip. It was mostly raining on us the entire time, and this was just a few weeks ago, right? So It should have been when some of the weather was starting to change, but no, we essentially we dived into the fog and then we kind of broached it for a minute, and then we dived right back into it. And I think that says something even about the stories that we were relating. The weather was very good to us in terms of helping set a vibe, I think.
Oh, that's good. I always think that I grew up on the East Coast, and when winter is just gray, and it's like, I don't know why. I love California so much. I get up, my sunshine is here. In fact, I was just having a discussion with someone. If you're out of shape in California, it's your fault, because it's beautiful all the time. You just want to be out and moving around.
Yeah, that's right.
Did you guys do any, I don't know why I'm segueing to this, but when you were in Kentucky, did you do Bobby Mackey's?
We didn't. We drove by Bobby Mackey's, and I heard what Greg had to think about it, and some of their experiences there, which I don't really remember straight off the top of my head, but I know they had experiences there, and they've been there. It's interesting. Wow, talk about really an inauspicious place while driving by. Looks like a standard sort of derelict honky tonk, nothing to see here, folks. But to see and to hear the activity there is fascinating. Yet I don't think it's too dissimilar to many other more pedestrian places all over the world. I think that story and narrative is everything, and I think that hype exists too. And not to say that Bobby Mackey's is hype. I'm not saying that at all. But per an example, I think that going back to what we were talking about before, there's so much activity. There's so many things out there that I think some of those stories just need to be revealed.
Yeah.
And I think that Bobby Mackey's has it's just another one of these places that their stories have been highlighted and they have been monetized and they've become a product. Right.
Yep.
So, not to say it's not real. Probably is. I've never been there. Don't have any experience myself. But that being said, it makes me excited to sort of essentially, hopefully, be on the forefront of digging in and finding new stuff.
Yeah. Oh, so tell us some more new stuff that we can expect in the second season.
this season was really interesting because it not unlike the first season, we feature individuals that have a myriad of anomalous activity, and I hope to really focus on the transformative quality of the phenomenon. And I say the phenomenon just generally, broadly, the supernatural and the mystical. But this season, I rode the subways with a real wizard in Brooklyn.
Oh, interesting.
I was out in Jersey, out in the wilderness, with a mystic who was actually trained by shamans in the Amazon, and has has all of these wild stories about shaman psychic warfare, and just really goes deep into this very, very mystical, very, very old form of divination. So that was intense. I talked with a well-known UFO researcher who is currently looking into the abyss. He has devoted his entire career to really studying this one topic, yet the more his heart became open to other experiences, and the more he saw the synchronicity and the similarities between other phenomena and the UFO epidemic, he began to really question his own belief systems. And now he's, sort of at Cathedral Perilous. Is that what it's called? Is that what Robert Anton Wilson called it? Chapel Perilous. Yes. Where you're really standing in this doorway, and if you enter, your life changes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You can still step back if you want to. So it's interesting, talking with a fairly young researcher who's on the edge of this cliff. I talked to a witch who actually practices multidimensionality, which is a completely sort of new topic for me.
What is that? Is that like jumping timelines and stuff?
Jumping complete physical and spiritual realities. We're talking completely leaving the constructs of what this would be and moving into a space that, is something similar to sort of a 70s psychedelic flick, or something. These fantastical places where folks believe you can transmute yourself and retain a certain level of your own personality and identity, but be in essentially an alien land with all sorts of perils and opportunity, opportunity to flourish and to learn things and to seek freedom, and then opportunities to be stuck and trapped and have evil done upon you. Right?
That's a little bit of, I kind of feel like that's a little bit of everything. Like I've had an experience. I had a very a little while back. I had an experience that I won't be talking about for a long time because it was as negative as it can get. And talk about things changing. Like it really does change you. But it's also like if you're going to open that door, it's not all Tinkerbell and it's not even all ghosts. And if you're going to open a door, you have to be ready to deal with the unknown that is on the other side. In fact, I was just having a conversation with someone about how I'm sure Jessa Reed will be back on the show, but there's a guy we like, a Russian writer, and he just did a channeling thing, and I don't know if it was called Tufi or something like that, and she kind of said something about how the spirit that's talking is kind of annoying. And I thought, well, we always think our rules here transfer over to the other dimension or the other, like, why wouldn't they be polite? Like and people start these, I think this is where they get in trouble with spells and stuff. If you're going to start a spell with a fairy or a whatever elemental spirit, they don't live by our rules. They are not interested in being polite, and they are not interested in, I give you this, you give me that. It's a very different thing. And I always think when you start to cross into those worlds, you have to be ready for that.
Yeah, so important to acknowledge that. We live in a world that, we don't even have the same standards or the standards for ethics, the same etiquette, right?
Etiquette, that's the word I wanted. Yes.
Yeah, like it's so different. I mean, imagine our cultural construct that we have here in the United States compared to even a completely civilized place like India, right? We have a completely different perspective on things like the homeless, right? Don't give that guy $1, like he's supposed to be a bum. Like that's his slot in life, as opposed to like, I don't know, like we want to help each other, right? There are stakes to this work, and personally, I feel very fortunate. I feel very lucky that I've never experienced anything seemingly malevolent or negative. But it doesn't mean it won't happen, and it does mean that one needs to practice responsibly and also allow themselves an anchor, right? Me and my friends will talk a lot about 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And I say it all the time. And I think I say it as a reminder myself, even. The further you get into this stuff, it becomes very, very esoteric very quickly. And you can kind of lose yourself to some of this stuff. It's the shiny thing, right? It's the, for those curious minded, it's like, oh my God, I'm discovering what the universe means. Right? Like, let's run towards that. But you have to keep in mind that you are a person and you have family and friends and you have responsibilities that are a part of all this, that are a part of all this process. So an anchor, I think, is what I'm going to start talking about in terms of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Allow yourself, develop an anchor so that you're not slipping through. And listen, like if you talk to mystics, they'll interpret this essentially this visualization of a golden cord, right? Yes. Or these ropes, and even during a lot of their process, a lot of their meditations, and a lot of you even talk about out of body experiences, right? Or people who practice this. There's usually some sort of tether involved.
Yes. In that book, this lady talks about a chakra that I have never heard of, and it's called, I think Jessa was saying plate, Plait, and this lady was saying this chakra is on the back, sort of on your back, and it's how the universe sort of whips you around. And I tried to look it up, and for some reason, braids kept coming up, BRAIDS. And
who do tarot readers go for tarot readings? They go to Melissa Sonova at melissasonova.com. She gave me the best reading a couple of months ago that is still resonating and helping me out now. She is authentic and to the point. You loved her on the podcast. She is the no BS tarot reader. She also has a tarot class online right now. Check it out. Just watching the promo, you will see how much fun you are going to have while you learn. Also, check out her book, which is always right beside me when I'm doing my readings or my tarot card for me in the morning. It is called Kitchen Table Tarot, and you will love it. Melissa Sonova, that's MELISSACYNOVA. Check her out.
A couple weeks ago, it was a very strange thing, and I don't want that to happen again, but I feel like it happened for a reason. It was my warning, but it does kind of, it's, I don't know if it's fear, but it's like we are brought up to think there's us and there's God, and then there's a couple things in between, but mostly it's like a straight shot there. We die and we go to heaven and there's nothing else, or kind of, but the fact that there's like other dimensions and societies and things. And I was always amazed ever since I was little that we thought it's just us and God. And that's the part that kind of blows my mind. Like there's a system in order, it's kind of like a video game. And I don't think we're the highest level. I apologize about the motorcycles again.
That's okay. Sounds like a John Woo movie.
I know. I should have shut my window, but it's too beautiful.
It's great.
But do you know what? I'm not sure if I'm making sense, but the fact that, there's guides on a different level and there's a process. Like, I just think we were taught it's 1, 2. And it's like, no, I don't even think we have the mental capabilities to understand what the whole, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
The
right.
next dimension. Or there's a book called Flatlands that's about a 2-dimensional thing that's like a piece of paper. Do you know this book?
No.
It's an ancient book, and it's about like this 2-dimensional being that's like a piece of paper. So, and this 3-dimensional like round thing comes up and goes through their dimension. But since they are 2-dimensional, all they see is a point that turns into a line that then comes back to a point. I hope I explained, like the round globe that went through, because that's all their perspective holds. And that's what I think we are. I think, they say that 4th dimension is around us. It's like a fan that's moving so fast that you can see through it, but you can, don't put your hand in it, but it's like that kind of, I don't even know if we have the capacity to understand what is even beyond that.
Yes. I think a lot of folks will say that the paranormal phenomenon, whatever variety it shows up, is perhaps the same thing, and perhaps just a reflection of ourselves trying to rationalize, trying to integrate ourselves into a dimension that we're not allowed. Right? So we have these transmutations of physical elements, of elementals, of cryptids, of flying discs that are reflections of maybe culturally what we've consumed. And they're now showing this other dimension is showing itself, whether that be a glitch or whether that be through investigation and perusal and deep focus. It's showing us itself in ways that maybe we can try to understand, but that we really can't grasp the complexity of it.
Or we can have respect for it at least. And, and I'm way over my break. Hang on a second and we'll be right back. Psychic medium and buddy of mine, Terry Huberman, is with me today. Terry, you've given me so many great readings and healings, and now you've got everything together in one package. Tell me about that.
I sure do. So this package has energy healings, readings, and coaching.
Coaching, that's the best. And people, they buy the package. You give them coaching once a week?
Yeah, so we meet online once a week, and in between, there's support as well.
And who would this be for?
This is really for folks who are in indecision, needing to get into their intuition because they're blocked or stuck. They need to move forward. And so we explore what the root causes of the problems are.
And helps them get out of their own way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Terrific. And what can they expect from this?
Sure. So moving from anxiousness to confidence, accessing their freedom, joy, and security, and really being in alignment with themselves so they have that clear direction, so they know, this is what I need to do next to reach my goals.
So now there's something that's free so people can talk to you and see if this is for them.
Yeah, absolutely. On my website, terryhuberman.com, there is a page where you can click, and it's the intuitive coaching package. And there is a button there that says schedule a free call. So you go ahead, schedule it. We'll get on a call and you can learn more about this program, and we'll see if this is a good fit for you or not.
See if there's chemistry.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
It's an odd date.
terryhuberman.com, TerrieHuberman. I highly recommend it, folks. Okay, Jim, EVP Fonet. Say that 10 times fast.
Yeah.
What is that?
I feel like I don't know. Honestly, I don't know if it was on purpose. I'm a designer, and I always like the use of these instead of use. And I like the challenge of replacing the U with the V in some instances of the Euphomet identity, because it's not hard enough to have to spell it out for people to go to euphomet.com. Because they go, what, Baphomet? What are you talking about? So I think that was just a little bit of a challenge, because I'm weird and I like some esoteric design in there.
Well, I love that. A comedian works for words for a living, so whenever you can do that, it's beautiful. But do you have some EVPs up, or some stuff goes with that, or you were just fooling us?
I think, just fooling, just playing around. I mean, EVPs pop up within my work, especially folks that I feature. But I myself am not really a collector of them. I don't really have any devices myself or anything. Actually, I lied. I do have, I'm looking at it right now, I have a PSB7 spirit box. But the only reason I have this is because I bought it when Carl and I went out on the road. And I said to myself, well, Carl, like maybe it will just occur to us that we'll need to do the Estes method somewhere, right? Mm-hmm. And I'll pull you into it, and we'll have a little bit of extra content if we need. So I have this spirit box. It has never been used. It's just sitting on my shelf right now, and I don't know if I'm ready to make the leap and start sort of collecting evidence myself in that sort of way, especially sort of on any of my own projects. There's a certain level of me that is scared to get involved in it in that way. I think that I have a challenge. I have a distinct challenge to try to keep at least a shred of journalistic integrity when I'm meeting with these folks, so I can be incredulous yet also passing no judgment, but also making sure that I cover my bases in terms of questions. And I already am in a state where I don't know what I believe, but I am inclined to be really excited about all the phenomenon. So I'm like one step away from just being like, well, I mean, of course you talk to angels every night. Like, let's break it down. Let's talk about this. Can I talk to them? What is their names? So I'm just one step away from that anyway. So whatever buffers I can have between me and that, I'm desperately trying to hold on to at this point.
Well, I agree with that. In fact, I always talk about how no ghost hunting in your own house. That's what you tell people. Don't open that conversation because you might not be able to stop it. And I know a friend of mine that before he does his cases, and he lets the people know, but when he calls them to interview them, he tapes the phone call, almost always an EVP on the phone call. And when you have a client, whether they say they're afraid or not, it's very different when they hear that voice that they don't recognize that's in their home. So I agree. Keep your boundaries is a good thought on that.
Yes, boundaries. Very important in this work.
So a weird question, because I cannot wait for the wizard episode. Wizard as in separates itself from Wiccan?
Yes. Yeah. So wizard in terms of manifesting realities, perhaps, of being a sort of an archetypal sage, right? So this guy, Devin Person, he lives in Brooklyn, and he rides the subway daily, robed as a wizard, full robe, hat, the whole thing, the long white beard, the whole thing. This episode is up right now. It was our first episode, so people can check it out right now, Euphomet.com or wherever they listen to podcasts. And there's also a short film that's on Planet Weird's YouTube right now, so you can see Devin in person and his interactions with folks and the general public.
You got to admit, he went all in. If you're going to be a wizard, be a wizard.
Completely went all in.
Yeah,
exactly. And what I love about Devin is he's embracing the archetype as a spell, essentially, because if you ask him, well, why are you a wizard? Like, are you a wizard? And you look at him and you go, well, I guess, I don't know. So it's a form of hypnotism. It's a form of manifestation. And, he does things like offer clients and general public. He offers them, he'll do he'll grant wishes. And they'll usually be, in exchange for something. So, and they're usually like sort of consciousness-inspired self-actualization things, right? So in a lot of ways, he's a little bit like a life coach in some regard. The New York Times just did an article on him, and a part of that is exploring this notion that sometimes, hey, what do you want in life? Okay, well, yeah, I'll grant that wish if you go home and you make your bed every morning after you get up, right? Because sometimes I think humans, we get so focused on the rat race of life, that we can't separate and gain a higher level of consciousness in terms of our self-awareness to really interpret what we want. And actually to go through the process of making things happen. Right. So that's essentially what Devin does as a wizard. He also, he's a very big proponent of ritual magic. He's a very big proponent of hypnosis. And so he uses tools like that. He uses the sigils in his rituals. So, it's all about actualization. It's all about manifestation. And these things really do boil down to very simple humanistic things that we can all do. And it's a win.
It's very interesting. And he would sell 1 million t-shirts if they said, "My life coach is a wizard." I would be the first to buy that. That's fascinating. And I'm going to go listen to that one right away. I know we're pre-taping, so it actually isn't out, but I can't wait to listen to it. But I have talked about this when I read tarot cards, is sometimes it's just the power of suggestion, where I'd have someone come to me we've been trying to have kids, we can't have kids, and the first card will come up that says pregnant, and I go, "I don't know what you're talking about. You're going to have a kid. The cards right here are saying you have no problem with this." And I'll get a phone call within a week. "I can't believe it. I'm pregnant." And I always think, is that the power of suggestion, that they have a trust in my voice more than theirs? Or is it that weirdly they psychically knew it, picked up, and they wanted, like, they kind of made the appointment at that time? But it's more than coincidental that somebody will be like, "We haven't been getting pregnant in 5 years." Boom. It's like that. But, so I think that's very fascinating. So I'd love to watch that and find the difference between what he says with the word wizard. And, that's fabulous. And it's funny, I do automatic writing in the morning, and sometimes I get stuff that I don't know what it means. And today I got a phrase and I looked at it 4 times, and I think it's actually what you just kind of talked about. And the phrase was ritual genius. That genius is just having your ritual. Like you were saying, he might give them a thing. You make your bed every morning. So what he's done is he's connected a positive thought to a habit.
Yes.
And it's funny because my father, when we were little kids, he always told us that we had to make our bed. Otherwise at night, there wouldn't be any sleep in it. And you know what? Both of us, me and my sister, 50 years later, still making our bed.
Yeah, well, he's right. I didn't make my bed this morning, and I'm thinking about right now, and the sheets are all weird, and like it's just not. You're missing your pillow. It's like he's completely right.
Yes.
But it's so wild because the power of suggestion leading to these incidents that are beyond coincidence is, everyone has a story of this. Daily basis sometimes. And I think that's what's important to consider with the supernatural in general, is that whatever may be going on, whether it's, sort of quote unquote real or not, there is something happening. There is a reaction that we're having. And by the way, there is a control to be had with some of this stuff. It is, I believe, a co-creative process in which we are susceptible to influence. We are susceptible to suggestion, and so is the world around us. And so that's why, it's more than appropriate to try to really narrow in your intent and be self-aware, but also be conscious of others in this space, because our energies, what we think, what we do, what we say, it all matters. It all matters.
Yeah. And I have to tell this one story because it fits, and I can't remember. I apologize, everyone, if I've told this on the last 5 podcasts, but it's funny what our, we talk a lot about mind over matter in in the parapsychology course. And Lloyd Arbach is the teacher, and he is so brilliant. I can't even tell you. And in fact, he was talking about a book the other day, and he goes, it's a little dense, but I think you'll like it. And I'm thinking, if you think it's dense, it's going to explode my head. I can't read. The textbook now is too much for me. You think it's dense. But I always tell this story about how when I was a little kid, when I was in 6th grade, I got in a foul shooting contest for basketball. And I got to the state finals, and you do 3 sets of 10. And you do 10 and you sit down and the next person goes. So the first time up, I get 9 out of 10 baskets. The second time up, I get 8 out of 10 baskets. And then the third time I don't know if it was 7 or 9, but that's how many shots went in. And as we end this, my father comes running over to me and he's like freaked out, like, holy cow. And in my little 6th grade mind, I'm thinking, why are you freaked out? You told me to put the ball in the basket. So I put the ball in the basket. Like, I didn't have the knowledge that's hard. And so,
right.
And it never happened again. Never, but I always think I remember looking at him like, but you said to put it, like it was so simple in that time. So that, I guess, is where our brain, takes over. But, oh my God, I feel like we've been talking for 10 minutes. The hour's up. The hour's up. Jim, always such a pleasure. Everybody check out Euphomet. EUPHOMET.com. It will also be in the show notes. Season 2 sounds great. Anything else you want to tell us about, Jim, we should check out, or?
I don't think so. Yeah, just go check out the show, subscribe, rate, and review. It's on Apple Podcasts. And as always, it's incredible to talk to you, and I can't wait to see you in person sometime very soon.
I know.
In which we can share at one point in time. And thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it, Karen.
Thank you. Tell Carl I said hello. Everybody, check it out. Subscribe on iTunes. I forget, what do I do here? Check out my comedy dates. If you can leave me a 5-star review or whatever, or a 1-star, whatever you feel, it's all good. Thanks, everybody. Thanks to Mike at Uno Rising Media, and we'll see you next week.